Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to AusLit 101, and we're continuing my insane amount of book recommendations on Australian history. And today we're going to be talking about a niche that I actually kind of really love. We're going to be talking about the explorers of Australia, the European explorers that had the undesirable job of traveling through desert and unpredictable hot weather to find new land to settle. And there's a lot of books here, and let's get started because I actually kind of really love this subject. It's so interesting, it's so chaotic, and I kind of love it. I'm going to be talking about a lot today, but there also will be some books that will be in the public domain because some of these are so old, and so I'll link them below too, like I done with the First Fleet. And whenever I get the chance to, I will tell you that. And so, anyway, let's start. So, Australian explorers. Where do you want to? If you have to do a couple of books, I would say go for anthologies of explorers because there is so many. And again, I'm not going to be able to talk about everyone. So, if you have any in the comments, please let me know about Australian explorers recommendations because it's such a big niche, but I love it. So yeah, I'd start with anthologies. I've got two here. I don't own any of these. The Explorers by Tim Flannery and Outback by Derek Parker are two great, slim volumes, 2 pages about each main person. Very lovely and a lovely place if you want to start because you may read one of them and one of these explorers and you're like, I want to learn more about them. There you go. It's a lovely, two lovely anthologies to find, ebook, physical, or whatever. Keep an eye out for them. And I think it's also good because there's a lot of those explorers who don't get the attention. And because, it's not the most popular genre ever, they won't get their own, new releases. No one's going to write a new history about them with new evidence. Someone like Burks and Wills, who we'll get to later. So I think keep two anthologies, pick between them. They're both really lovely. But let's get to the actual free explorers if you want to dip your toes in to see what's going on. A lot of these are first-hand accounts, so they are going to be a bit more dry, but I chose them because I found them more interesting and they're in the public domain, so you don't have to pay for them pretty much. And so the first explorer we're going to be talking about is John McDowell Stewart. I'm going to be talking about he's recommending his book Explorations in Australia, which is pretty much his accounts of expeditions from 1858 to 1862, and pretty much Stewart led the first successful expedition in midland Australia. So pretty much he discovered the Northern Territory and all those inland parts. And pretty much realized there was only desert there really, because there was a theory before that there was going to be a big lake, like a big river in the middle of Australia, because they thought all these, the Murray and all them, they all connect somewhere, but they were wrong. And so he proved it pretty much. Stewart is interesting because he showed so much care for his team. He traveled for a long time, so many expeditions. He never lost a single man on his trips in the harshness of Australia, and that needs to be included. But his accounts of his travels are very lovely. This is a great time where I'm going to rant because where is his trade paperback release? Where is literally any book about his explorations? They're so interesting, and I'm going to keep bringing these up as we keep going through AusLit because there are so many great examples where I'm like, where is the book about this person? And we'll get to that. And next we're going to talk about probably the most famous, probably dark comedy, some people call it, exploration of Burke and Wills, the Digtree. And this is probably the most famous one. This happened in 1860 to 1861. And pretty much 16 men were led by Robert O'Hara Burke and William John Wills. And they planned to travel from Melbourne all the way to the Gulf of Carpentine. I can't say that name. So it's pretty much straight up into Queensland, not Cooper Pedy level up, but it's an intense journey. So pretty much that turned into roughly 3,250 kilometers of traveling on foot, or if you're 2,000 miles pretty much on foot with camels and horses. This was mostly unexplored land by Europeans, so they really wanted to be the first to do it. So they had that bit of an ego to them, but also they wanted to do it to increase the influx of immigrants coming to Australia to find more gold. So it's like we need to keep exploring to, see if we can find more gold. So that was like one of the main purposes. So it was a long journey. They left on the 20th of August. Very public event. People cheering, clapping and all that. And it just went awful. They experienced monsoons. Their horses died. They did actually have camels, which was interesting because that was a new exotic thing to do because camels were obviously more equipped for Australia than horses. And because they were exotic brought from Egypt, it was more of a big deal. They got lost. In hindsight, the exploration was like rushed and just doomed to fail. And pretty much they get 12 weeks into their exploration. I know I'm ranting about this, but this is really important. And Burke and Wills make a decision that's going to impact pretty much everyone on this journey. And they're 12 weeks in, and at Cooper's Creek, they decide, this isn't worth it. We're going to, Burke's Wills, and I think two other people were like, we're going to keep traveling forth. We're going to keep traveling another 4 months with half rations, really no clue where they're going, really, because it was unexplored. And all the other people, 15 people, were going to stay back at Cooper's Creek for 3 months and wait for them to come back. And so they decided to do that. They actually made it, which is really interesting. I'm trying to get my notes here. They literally were traveling in summer, which is pain, half rations. They reached the Gulf in February of 1961, 4 months after they left. And they made it. Then it took them an extra 4 months to come back just to Cooper's Creek. And they went back to their base. And the most famous thing about this is the dig tree, this big tree, and it had a sign on them saying, dig here, and they dug, and it was a handful of rations. And it turned out that the crew had left only hours before they returned back from their 8-month pretty much journey all the way up to the Gulf. And so they were like, what do we do now? We don't have the energy to do anything. So they decided to, and this is a bit sad, they attempted to travel to a local outpost station, which was near a mountain called Mount Hopeless. So a bit of foreshadowing there. It was 200 kilometers away, or 124 miles on top of that. And Burke and Wills, those two never made it. It's believed that they poisoned themselves because of the flour they were making at the time, and it was like the seeds they used or whatever. And they never made it. It's also important that they ignored help from indigenous people along their journey too. There's a famous story of how, I can't remember if it was Burke or Wills, but one of them, an indigenous person tried to give them fish because they're obviously like, these poor white people are struggling really hard and they're going to die. And one of them pulled out their gun and fired shots in the air pretty much. So they ignored a lot of things going on. And only one man made it and made that outpost to inform everyone. And that's the only pretty much reason we knew they ever made it to the Gulf. And later on, Burke and Will's bodies were found. And it's kind of been like a huge thing that's taught, even though it was kind of like Gallipoli, where there's a lot of national pride, even though the actual event was a failure. And it's very interesting. And the reason I rant about this, because there is some really great books on this. In terms of stuff that was more relevant to the time, I'm going to give you journals of Lantborough's expedition from I can't say her name, to the Gulf. It's pretty much an 1862 book which talks about their expedition. Very interesting. And I'd also recommend Successful Exploration Through the Interior of Australia by William John Wills. This is one of more of his diaries, 1863. So it was a bit, a year or two after he died, but very interesting. But if you want more of a contemporary thing, this is a modern classic in its own right. And that is The Dig Tree by Sarah McGard. I can't say her name, sorry. But again, it'll be in description. This is, if you're going to do like a contemporary nonfiction about Burke and Wills, this is the one to go to. it's lovely. She puts a lot of research into it, a lot of new evidence. She broke a lot of myths with this book, because it was believed that Burke and Wills were, for a long time, considered to be great explorers. That they were going to be up there with like Ernest Giles, and some of the big Australian explorers. Like in terms of they were as prepared and as smart, really. And I didn't, because it was really rushed, and this book shatters that myth, and it's really interesting. And again, if you want to do it, it's not that long. And so that's the books I'd recommend if you want to do Burke and Wills. There's again in the description. Then the last explorer we're going to be talking about today is Ernest Gills. He wrote a lovely book called Australia Twice Traversed, and he also wrote another book called Geographic Travels in Central Australia. He pretty much led 5 major expeditions. He pretty much found South Australia, and also Port Augusta included, which is really cool. And also from Western Australia too. He helped discover a lot of areas around there, pretty much from 1872 to 75. If you want to do the one thing by him, Trice Traversed is recounting all 5 of his expeditions. But if you want to niche down to his travels a bit more, then you got Travels in Central Australia. But again, very lovely reading, a great explorer. It's really riveting to read travel nonfiction, especially journals. I personally love it. But again, he's not in print. I think I don't have a copy of him because a lot of his books are literally 80, 70, 60 years old and expensive for some reason. So I don't have a copy to show you. But again, where is his big trade paperback? Who knows? But anyway, I'm going to put, again, all these books in the description. And yeah, if you have any more recommendations for Australian traveling explorer nonfiction, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.